Hermès isn't just facing backlash, it's facing collapse. For decades, the Birkin bag has symbolized untouchable luxury. You couldn't just buy one, you had to be invited. It was marketed as rare, artisanal, dripping in prestige.
Are made in China, and most of them are made in our factory.
Yeah. A little over 1 square foot of vaqueta leather came out. 2 different finishes. The best vaqueta leathers in the market is $7, $8. At their level, let's give them $10. And you need 2 square foot. So $20 for the leather, $5 for the materials, inner linings, fabrics, authentication, chip, and $10 for the labor.
You recognize this style, this bag? Of course you do. For the past more than 30 years, we have been the OEM factory for most of the luxury brands around the world.
But now, the veil's been ripped off. And the person holding the thread? Doillon, daughter of Jane Birkin, the very woman whose name made the Birkin bag iconic. She's not doing press tours or making polite statements. She's launching legal missiles. The demand was simple: shut it down or face the courtroom.
Luxury bags carefully handcrafted in China. The viral TikToks from Chinese factory workers, the internet is now in a frenzy over claims that some of the most iconic designer bags are actually born in the East.
But it wasn't just about a name. This was about betrayal, exploitation, and a brand built on lies. The timing couldn't have been worse for Hermès. As whispers of bankruptcy circulate, videos are surfacing that show Birkins possibly being produced far from any quaint French atelier. TikToks are going viral, lawsuits are stacking, stylists are turning their backs, and insiders? They're leaking everything. The carefully manufactured myth of Hermès is unraveling, and fast.
Handbags, purses, and shoes of Louis Vuitton, Chanel, Gucci, Coach, Prada, you name it. Most of them are made in China.
This isn't just a PR problem, it's a full-blown identity crisis. Because when the name on your best-selling product tells you to stop, you either stop or you fall hard. But the backlash was just beginning. When Doillon made her move, it wasn't a plea for respect. It was a shot across the bow. One legal document, one powerful ultimatum: shut down Birkin production, or go to war. And it hit like a wrecking ball. This wasn't some social media rant or behind-the-scenes complaint. This was a legally backed demand from the heiress to the Birkin name. And she came armed with decades of receipts. For years, Hermès built an empire off her mother's legacy without paying a single royalty. Jane Birkin wasn't a partner. She was a borrowed silhouette, a name repurposed for profit.
This Birkin bag at Hermès boutique will cost you 38,000 USD. One piece of Togo leather, the same leather as this one, will cost 450 USD. And one piece of the leather is only enough to make one Birkin.
Luxury bags carefully handcrafted in China. Turns out your quote-unquote made in Italy luxury handbag might have more ties to Chinese factories than to Tuscan.
Lou had seen enough. And when she moved, it wasn't just about principle. It was about leverage. Hermès executives didn't even have time to blink. One moment they were sipping espresso in morning meetings. The next they were calling emergency sessions in hushed tones. Production was halted mid-stitch. Internal schedules were pulled off walls. Panic wasn't just creeping in, it was kicking down the doors. And Lou wasn't bluffing. She knew what she was doing. By targeting the very product that defined Hermès, she hit them where it hurt most: public image and bottom line. Suddenly, this wasn't just a legal squabble. It was a legacy war. And what happened next would rattle the entire industry. For years, Hermès convinced the world that a Birkin bag wasn't just a purchase, it was a privilege. Each one, they claimed, was a handmade treasure, crafted by seasoned French artisans with years of training. But behind the glossy boutique windows and 5-figure price tags, the real numbers tell a different story. According to experts who've dissected Birkins layer by layer, the entire bag costs just over $1,400 to make, including the finest Togo leather, the thread, the hardware, and the interior linings. And yet, that same bag walks out of the boutique for $30,000 or more.
Today, I'm going to break it down in front of you, step by step. First thing first, Hermès only use the leathers from the 3 top-level suppliers. One is called Nuti from Italy. The second is Weinheimera from Germany, and the third is Haas from France. One piece of Togo leather, the same leather as this one, will cost 450 USD. And one piece of the leather is only enough to make one Birkin, okay? And next, the thread. And of course, for Hermès Birkin, the thread is also the best top level. It's called fil à chinois from France. This is actually the Rolls Royce in thread. For each bag,
The math doesn't lie, but Hermès does a good job pretending it does. TikTok creators and industry insiders have started to pull back the curtain, exposing the materials, the sourcing, and the processes that Hermès would rather keep buried. One user even filmed a full breakdown. Thread that costs $25, leather that runs $450, edge oil at $50, hardware at $150. The rest? Marketing. And it's working. Or it was. Because now, consumers are asking questions. Questions Hermès isn't ready to answer. When you market a product as a sacred, slow-crafted heirloom, but manufacture it with mass-market margins, people eventually catch on.
cost is 25 USD. And then the hardware. See, this hardware is called 316 hardware. It's also known as the ocean stainless steel because it can withstand the erosion of seawater. It's the best stainless steel. For one piece of bag, the hardware will cost 150 USD. The edge oil. This edge oil is imported from Italy. It's called heat steel edge oil. For each bag, it will cost 50 USD.
What they're finding is that exclusive might have just meant expensive, not exceptional. And that illusion? It was about to burst wide open. No press release, no documentary, just one shaky phone camera. And it was enough to unravel decades of Hermès mystique. A factory worker, calm and precise, filmed a TikTok walking viewers through the exact cost breakdown of a real Birkin. No drama, no filters, just facts. And the truth was brutal. This supposedly sacred artifact of French luxury, likely made in China, or at the very least, assembled far from the storied ateliers Hermès loves to romanticize. In under 2 minutes, the video crushed everything Hermès had spent years building.
Interior lining. It used lambskin imported from France. For each bag, the cost will be 100 USD. And also inside, there is a zipper from Riri brand. And the zipper for one bag is 10 USD. And then the cost of human resource. The French artisans is much more expensive than Chinese artisans. To finish one bag, the human resource cost will be 600 USD. The package. Now this is not that expensive, it's 10 USD. So now to sum those up, the total cost will be...
It showed not only the real costs, but the real location. And that changed everything. The brand's biggest promise, that Birkins were handcrafted in Parisian workshops by artisans with soul, was suddenly on trial. The soft lighting and silk scarves couldn't hide the new reality.
1,400 USD for one Birkin out of factory. But why Hermès will charge you 38,000 USD for one bag? That's because more than 90% of the price is paid for its logo. But if you do not care about the logo, you just want the same quality, same material, you can just buy from us. Because for our bags, we use exactly the same material, same leather, same hardware, same edge oil. The only difference is one, we don't have the logo, so we don't have to pay so much amount of money just for that logo. And second, our human resource is much cheaper. This is why this bag from our factory.
Consumers weren't just paying for craftsmanship, they were paying for the fantasy. And now, that fantasy was being exposed one stitch at a time. Worse, the video went viral. Millions watched it. Influencers reposted it. Luxury forums exploded. And while Hermès tried to stay silent, silence became an admission. Because in a world where perception is everything, TikTok had just turned the Birkin into a punchline. And this wasn't just about Hermès anymore. Jane Birkin never asked to be immortalized in calfskin. The Birkin bag was born from a casual airplane conversation, a one-off idea that spiraled into a global luxury obsession. But as Hermès raked in billions, Jane saw none of it. No royalties, no equity, no real partnership, just a name. Her name used to sell status to people who'd never even listened to her music or seen her films. And now, her daughter Lou is making sure that silence ends. This wasn't about a handbag. It was about erasure, about how an icon's legacy was repackaged, resold, and reduced to an accessory. Hermès spun Jane's effortless charm into a brand myth, then turned around and treated her like an afterthought. No contract, no consent, just decades of branding without a trace of respect. And Lou? She lived through all of it. watched it happen in real time. That's why her legal strike wasn't just calculated. It was deeply personal. She didn't want a seat at the table. She wanted to burn the table down. By putting legal firepower behind her mother's name, she shifted the balance of power, not just in court, but in culture. She reminded the world that luxury brands don't just borrow names, they steal meaning. And when that theft goes unchecked, it festers. But Lou wasn't done. She was just getting started. The moment Lou Doillon fired her first legal shot, the floodgates opened. It wasn't just about reclaiming a name. It became a full-scale reckoning. In the US, Hermès found itself facing a revived antitrust lawsuit. And this time, the allegations were louder, meaner, and backed by consumer fury. The claim? That Hermès created a rigged system, forcing buyers to spend thousands on belts, scarves, and shoes just to earn the privilege of being offered a Birkin. That's not exclusivity, that's manipulation. And it wasn't a one-off complaint. The lawsuit documented a pattern. A quiet, unspoken policy enforced by boutique staff globally. Want the bag? Play the game. Spend big. Hope for approval. And keep your mouth shut. But now, buyers who once felt special feel scammed. And they've lawyered up. Meanwhile, back in Europe, Hermès heir Nicolas Puet landed in his own billion-dollar legal nightmare. A dispute over shares that threatens the financial spine of the company. Suppliers, once loyal to Hermès for decades, have started demanding upfront payments instead of trust-based agreements. That's not standard business. That's fear. Fear that the luxury house isn't as stable as it pretends to be. The lawsuits are stacking. The illusion of control is slipping. And for a company that built itself on the myth of heritage and loyalty, this is a brutal twist. And behind the scenes, Hermès was quietly unraveling. It started with whispers. Then came the lockdowns. Inside Hermès headquarters, the panic wasn't just real. It was escalating fast. Artisans were told mid-stitch to stop production. Manufacturing schedules were yanked off walls. Executives huddled in private rooms. Phones silenced, as legal teams scrambled to assess the damage. What was once a fortress of luxury turned into a bunker of anxiety. Leaks flooded out like cracks in a dam. Anonymous insiders began feeding journalists screenshots, memos, and transcripts. Proof that Hermès had known for years about outsourcing inconsistencies. Some artisans threatened to live-stream their work. Proof that certain Birkins weren't being assembled in France at all. Security guards were stationed outside sample rooms, tasked with confiscating phones and silencing the staff. Then came the influencers. Top stylists quietly issued a memo. No more Birkins. No more flexing orange boxes on red carpets or Instagram reels. Kim Kardashian? Silent. Cardi B? Switched to Goyard. Drake? Gone ghost. Resale platforms descended into chaos as owners tried to dump inventory before values crashed. Some bags sold at half price overnight. And Hermès? It tried to play it cool. But behind the glass storefronts and rehearsed PR statements, the fear was thick. You could feel it. The empire was cracking, and the world was watching. But Lou's next move would bring everything to a standstill. If Lou's cease and desist was a warning shot, her next move was a direct hit. With Hermès already wobbling under the weight of scandals and lawsuits, Lou's legal team escalated fast. They didn't just demand transparency, they filed for a full-scale forensic audit of Hermès' global supply chain. Every factory, every subcontractor, every product labeled "Made in France." The court ordered Hermès to prove it, stitch by stitch. Then came the gut punch, a request for an asset freeze. Not partial, full. That meant bank accounts locked, assets frozen, and a legal grip tight enough to choke the company's ability to operate. This wasn't some symbolic move. It was a calculated strike. Lou's team wasn't bluffing, and the court took it seriously. Suddenly, Hermès had to open the books, flip the cushions, and pray no skeletons fell out. And let's be honest, they're definitely hiding something. You don't request this kind of audit unless you already know where the bodies are buried. Lou's demand didn't come from emotion. It came from precision. Years of watching her mother's name be exploited, of hearing about French craftsmanship while Chinese factories did the work, had finally reached a breaking point. Now the myth was being forced into the light, and luxury doesn't do well under fluorescent scrutiny. But the illusion wasn't just breaking, it was collapsing completely. Luxury sells silence. It thrives on secrets, on the idea that what's behind the curtain is too exclusive to question. But Hermès didn't just get caught with its curtain open. It got caught staging the entire show. The illusion that every Birkin was a masterpiece, crafted in a quiet French atelier, gone. Consumers now see the truth, that much of what they were sold was marketing wrapped in myth, not heritage wrapped in leather. The damage wasn't just reputational, it was financial. Investors backed away. Suppliers demanded payment up front. Internal memos leaked, revealing execs scrambling to maintain liquidity. One stylist source claimed the CEO admitted, "Cash runway is dangerously short," and suddenly, that word no luxury brand dares to whisper, bankruptcy, was floating in the air like perfume gone sour. The ripple effect was brutal. Waitlists vanished. Apposits evaporated into legal limbo. Resale prices plummeted. Rival brands saw blood in the water and began quietly raising prices to catch the fallout. Even France itself, so proud of its luxury titans, watched as Hermès, its golden child, became an international embarrassment. This wasn't just a brand falling, it was a system cracking, a signal that exclusivity built on illusion can't survive in the age of receipts and exposure. And at the center of it all, a daughter reclaiming a legacy, Doillon didn't just file a lawsuit. She flipped the script on an entire industry. For decades, Hermès sold the Birkin as a symbol of elite taste, timeless craftsmanship, and quiet power. But Lou reminded the world that beneath the leather and logos was a name, her mother's, that had been used, exploited, and commodified without respect. Her actions forced Hermès to face the truth. When you build an empire on someone else's identity, eventually, they come back to take it back. The fallout hasn't just exposed Hermès, it's exposed us, the consumers, the influencers, the culture that worshipped exclusivity without ever asking what it was built on. The Birkin wasn't just a bag, it became a cult symbol, a marker of status. But cults crumble the moment truth hits the altar. And now, that altar's on fire. What we're watching isn't just a scandal, it's a shift, a realization that luxury, at its highest levels, may be less about craftsmanship and more about carefully curated illusions. And if the Birkin fairy tale was smoke and mirrors, how many other heritage brands are bluffing too? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit that like button if you're done buying into myths. And subscribe, because this is just the beginning. More names, more stories, more secrets. The luxury world built a kingdom on fantasy. Now reality is knocking at the door.